Brilliant. Okay, so just fair warning, this talk has practically zero to do with testing, but I hope you enjoy it anyway, so here we go. Let's do it. Right. So, imagine that you are a little kid, really young, and basically the first thing you learn about yourself and who you are is that you're an annoying person. And you don't really mean to, but you just have this talent and you end up annoying people. And then say you get older, you go to school. The first thing you learn there is that you are naughty, because the teacher seems to just always have something to tell you what for. So at that moment, you are genuinely sorry, and you promise that you're going to do better. You really mean that as well. But then all that leads to really is just that you lose a bit more trust in yourself because you never seem to be able to keep those promises. So then as you grow up, next thing you learn about yourself is that you're a lazy person. And everyone says this and it must be true and you feel like it's true. But at the same time you seem to be working a lot harder than like everyone else just to do normal stuff, just to cope with life. So it doesn't seem to make any sense at all. And then basically, by the time you're an adult, you've learned that you do have dreams, you have ideas and goals, but you've also learned it's totally pointless. If something takes more than like an hour of time or so to finish a project, then there is just no point in even starting because you know you will never finish. So just like basically imagine having a brain which can see about one day into the future, and everything else comes, like all your obligations, all your tasks, all the events come looming out of this fog at you like this horrible surprise on a daily basis. So that's the introduction. Let's go to the next slide. That is what ADHD is really like. And I don't know if you know what you've heard about it. Probably you think of like hyperactive little boys when you think of this. It can affect girls too, and it does mainly last into adulthood as well. And that is actually the point where it starts really mattering. Because this is basically a disorder which stops you from planning ahead. It shouldn't really be called attention deficit hyperactivity. I mean, attention and hyperactivity are minor parts of it really. It's more about self-control and the ability to envision how to get something done. So a better name would be an executive function disorder, because the executive functions are the ones which are like behind your forehead, like your frontal lobes, and the bits which really are in control or you hope are in control to make a good life. So as you can imagine, there are some consequences if you are short-sighted in terms of time and planning. We can have a look at the next slide. Here are just like some of the nice tasters of like things you can probably expect to happen if you live with ADHD your whole life, which you will, because it's your brain. So there are going to be some consequences if you just can't seem to manage to hold everything in your head and get everything done that's important, and over time that really adds up. Okay, so let's move on and lighten the mood a little bit. I know that's a pretty dark start, but I want to, like, at this point, introduce you. You can't see it very well, but on the left there is my fiance, Francis, and I know both of us have brown curly hair in that picture, so that's him on the left. And Francis has ADHD, which is why I have even got involved in this area, know anything about it at all. He struggles with his ADHD all the time, but just like any disability, it's not the only thing to know about a person. He is brilliant at guitar, he loves cooking, he's great with words. Obviously I'm marrying the guy, I like him quite a lot, so I'll just tell you briefly how we met. We met in music A-level class, and then it all just went as normal from there really. He dropped out of school, I went to Cambridge, then he got hit by a car and I messaged him on Facebook, so it's just how these things generally go. But that is not what we're here to talk about, that's a different story. our story kind of starts once I got out of uni and we moved in together and adult life got underway. So, next slide please. And so we were in our early 20s, just like many people in their early 20s. We didn't have much money. He was in a band, which didn't earn very much, and in between being unemployed, he also had a whole string of not very nice minimum wage jobs. I wasn't doing that much better. I was doing private tuition and working part-time as an administrator. So we were getting along as best we could, but on top of that, we had ADHD to deal with. And all I can say is thank goodness we knew what it was, because with an early diagnosis that Francis got in childhood, at least we knew why we were having problems. We could do more research and try and understand it a bit more. And you basically need all this understanding you possibly can get, because I'll show you, living with ADHD basically looks like this. This is a picture of the kitchen at the time, and this level of mess was normal throughout the whole house all the time. And so really, ADHD challenges your sympathy on a day-to-day basis, and it can get very wearing to be like living with someone who just doesn't seem to be able to handle even stuff like just getting the dishes washed and that kind of thing. But actually, that wasn't even the most scary thing. Like, it was like annoying to be in a messy house, but more worrying than that was the daily drinking that Francis was doing. And even more worrying than that was this sense of like a lack of faith in himself, in our lives together, in our future. No sense of like really wanting to go on any adventures together, like any excitement about what we could achieve. And that was the thing which really made me worry about how we were even going to ever manage. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get stuck in here. I'm going to help him. We're going to fix this. Right. I loved reading self-help books as a child. I think I know almost most of what there is to know about efficiency and effectiveness and planning. We tried everything. We tried schedules, diaries, calendars, websites, apps, habit trackers, you know, the lot. Every single thing would last for about 2 weeks and then fall apart. So, for instance, we can look at a couple of other things I tried. Every so often we'd have massive cleanups and replace everything in nice ordered ways. That would last about 2 days, even less time. So, and we even got a filing cabinet, that is on the right there. We even used the filing cabinet. Francis was the first person to finish doing all his filing. But it's funny, but just having your paperwork in different sections does not lead to a completely organised life. So it still didn't really touch the problem. So after a couple of years of living together and trying these things and not really making any progress, obviously we felt pretty disheartened about that. And at that point, I had to admit that I had no more ideas and it wasn't working. So the best thing I could do was to try and help myself. So I took a step back, I started to teach myself to code, and after a year or so, I managed to land a job at Sky, as a developer, not a tester. But the very first day when I walked in for the grad scheme, they started talking about this thing called Agile and a Scrum framework and stuff. So we can go to the next slide. This, like, I could not believe I'd never heard of this. I thought I knew everything about all the self-help things that are out there. And this simple idea of having 2-week sprints, time-boxed ceremonies, things just, you know, that it's not too much stuff, but it's just enough to give you a structure, you know. I was blown away. I couldn't believe it's like being in the tech industry all along, and the tech industry hasn't told anyone that they have this. So I came home that day and I went straight to Francis and I was buzzing and I was like, Francis, we have to try this. And absolutely full credit to Francis, because if you've lived your whole life with mountains of evidence that anything you ever try is just doomed, like definitely not going to stick to it, you're definitely not going to finish it, nothing like that. Even so, like, he had a past to be cynical, but he was prepared to try it and give it his energy as well. So that very night, we cleared a tiny corner on the mess of our table and started writing post-it notes, which I think is the next slide. Here they are. And I took a photo because I just had a feeling this was going to be a momentous moment. But yeah. So all of these post-it notes just deal with the task of pushing a corkboard onto the wall. And we broke it down into as many tasks as possible. This was like a leap of faith. It was just, felt like, just a desperate attempt to give it a go. And we'd had that corkboard for like 3 years, and it'd been not put up. It had just been leaning on the wall. But within 3 days with this new galvanisation, it was up and looking like this. I did all the pretty columns of ribbons and so on. And we just felt like that was such a victory, like it would, we were onto something, although actually we'd only just started. This is like, now we've got the board, we could actually start doing sprints and all the other Scrum things which are part of Agile. So, like I said, we've tried so many things. Anything can last for a few weeks. This one, we got to like 2 weeks, a month. It was going good, but then we started missing a couple of our daily stand-ups. We called it a code red. We're like, quick, let's get back on it. It happened again. We're like, oh God, we need to keep doing this. But I'm very happy to report this was last July. It's now April this year. We are still going. So we can go to the next slide. We have just grown this system so much. It's got repeating tasks, it's got colour coding, we've got a burn up chart instead of a burn down chart because that's way more fun. We've got bonus points, we've gamified everything, if something's going to really be really boring for Francis, it gets loads of points even if it only takes 5 minutes or something like that. So it's just grown really organically, like Agile should work, and it's, I don't know what sprint we're on, I think 17, I don't know. So some of the effects of this have been small and some have been large. So I think the next one, this I suppose seems small. It's a kitchen rota, cleaning rota, which it was Francis' idea to do, and he would never have suggested that before though, because he would never have thought that he could ever stick to it. But as it's part of the Scrum system, we can kind of keep checking on it. And in fact, the kitchen stays cleaner than it ever did, the whole house stays cleaner than it ever did, and that's with me away at work all the time, and I don't actually do any of the housework anymore. So that just by itself is a huge win. But thinking a bit bigger, we have been able to think a bit bigger, and what else have we done? We've done the absolute nemesis of any person with ADHD. We've done the wedding planning. We're like about 100 days out now. We're like really getting going with all the different things we need to get done. We have even achieved things like Francis has given up smoking, even given up drinking. He gets a double bonus. We double all the points for every day that he doesn't drink. So that's one of the biggest bonuses. And even started looking at a new career for him, which we're looking at him being a paramedic. So we're working towards that as well. In terms of adventure and like faith in like going out there and doing things in life, I can't complain either, because in January we went on an early honeymoon to Vietnam for a month, which was incredible. The furthest we've been before that as a couple was Whitby, so a bit of a step up. And what else? Let's see. I think the next slide has more. Yeah. So I think the bigger impact is just the emotional one, because we have finally found a way of giving Francis some stability in life. And if you've lived your whole life without that feeling like, oh, I've got an idea, I could make it happen. Like that gap, that was just severed for him. So like we're beginning to bridge that, and he's beginning to believe a tiny bit that it is worth trusting himself, it is worth thinking of things he could try and do. He's described it himself as like being able to see, like having a rudder instead of just drifting completely without any direction in a boat in the sea. And what else have I said? Yeah, it's just like, I think fundamental for anybody's mental health and to stay sane is this feeling like you're a little bit in control of your own life and your long-term goals. So that is what it's done. And I just thought I'd insert here an extra slide with a stock photo for trying to link this to this particular event, because I think there are a couple of small links, they're small, but in terms of testing, it's like Agile is supposed to be about empirical evidence that something is working or not. And certainly we've got a very good feedback loop, because I come up with loads of ideas all the time about what other things we could try, what other ways we could use this system, and like at least half of them just don't go anywhere. Francis isn't keen, or it just doesn't stick and it just gets dropped off. So yeah, this is a very, very real world version of that. The other thing is that this is an example, I suppose, of a knowing-doing gap. So ADHD itself is a knowing-doing gap, because everyone with ADHD is perfectly intelligent and knows what they should do. But at the point of actually doing it, that is when you can't actually summon the knowledge and motivation to get that thing done. And in life as well, we often go to work and do something really, really clever and like specialised, and never consider where it might also, those skills could be transferred and applied to a different problem in our lives. So perhaps there's a way that testing or like some sort of framework that you use might be useful just in day-to-day ways that life goes. And one last point is the future of where this is all going. So now that we've kept it going for so long, I do have that little blog on Tumblr. It's only got the first few posts from when we first started, but you can tell probably from them like how much I was hoping it would work. I've also got like, this talk is on YouTube already once from the Agile Yorkshire event. Hopefully it will be again on this event, so that's great. And if you know of anyone who you think could benefit from this system, I'm trying to think of ways to reach out and start spreading this idea. And a very exciting path that, slight tangent from this, is the last time I gave this talk was in Skye in an internal kind of tech festival. And a person there from Amazon came up and started talking about how Alexa, the voice activation thing, could possibly work with Agile and with this kind of planning system to help people with ADHD. So I'm starting to use my new coding skills to try and figure out how that could work and spread it that way as well. So yeah, I just wanted to let you all know, Agile, we need to tell people about it. It's really cool. It's not just like a way to make software happen more efficiently. It's like also it could be anything, and especially it could be a treatment for people who live with this really debilitating disorder. So thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Any questions? We've got time. Thomas? Yeah, tried using a board with my wife, and it went down like a ton of bricks. So we kind of put housework and all that kind of stuff in there, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's worked, or why do you think it's been so successful in your case?
I think because there was a definite, clear need, like we needed something like this. So the closest, what ADHD says, there's medication which is really good, which Francis also takes, but the treatment for ADHD is literally to make the environment more structured and with more consequences and that kind of thing. And the short of going into the army, which Francis actually tried to do, ironically they rejected him because he has ADHD, but anyway, the only other way I found to structure an environment using only yourselves and not like a really expensive coach, life coach or something, is this. So yeah, but in general, if you're actually managing okay in your home life, then your partner is probably not going to be so thrilled to find a new system like this. It's more for a...
He does need to do more housework.
Yeah.
James, any questions?
I just want to say that this talk can come at a better time for me because I've just literally tried doing something with Kanban.
Yeah.
Between me and my wife, and sort of basically we're just trying to kind of have little tasks that we can achieve, and there's tick boxes and prioritisation, and I think it's actually done it for a few days and it's starting to help. Kind of get through and make sure we're not just going to get through the week and say, oh, we've not done anything. We've not done the washing.
Exactly.
We've got basically a year's worth of backlogs of things that we need doing, but we've just done so much, and it's sort of, I don't know why I've decided to do it, but it's working well, so it's kind of really good to see that.
It's a good way of making it more neutral as well. So it's a system you're both working on, it's goals you both have. It's not just one partner nagging the other one, which was an extreme danger for our case, because I just was so determined not to become the naggy person. But on the other hand, I didn't want to continue living the way we were living, so it was difficult. Yeah.
Rosie, any question?
Did you have retrospectives?
Oh yeah, we still have retrospectives. Yeah, we're like every couple of weeks we do our retro, and then we do our sprint plan, just like anybody else.
Did you have any kind of conflict in them, or?
We thought that foolishly that we skipped a couple of retros before, and then like halfway through the next week we have arguments, and we're like, this would have been exactly what we talked about back in the retro, and it would have been better. Actually at the retro it's usually quite calm and collected, and like we can look quite objectively about how it's going and everything. But if we wait and just leave it to bubble up, then that's not a good idea.
So was there much experimenting as you were going along and using the retros to sort of steer the direction of things?
Well, I'd say our retros are still underdeveloped, because mainly Francis he doesn't actually enjoy this process. He finds sprint planning and refining the backlog and those meetings really boring. So usually at the point of doing them, he is moaning a little bit about it. So the retro, we keep it as short as possible, like 5 minutes. So there is more we could probably do with it, especially if I think of like some sort of nice game or something to make it a little bit more interesting, then we'll have a bit more to like take from it. But every time there'll be some idea that we try to apply to the next sprint. So yeah.
I find cakes work.
Cakes? That's a good idea.
Cakes in the retros.
Then he would associate it with good things.
You don't get on unless you contribute.
It's a brilliant idea. Yeah.
I'll guess if you have a question.
I don't know how to ask. Do you imagine to use the system for a longer period, or like come to something different after time, or change systems periodically if you find more than one?
I think possibly we're going to do this for like the rest of our lives, which is a bit scary. But the thing with it is that's why Agile is like simple in theory but hard in practice, because like the only way to actually make it work is to keep on working on it. So unless we come across something else which structures everything as well as this does, I don't think we will. So and he's always going to need it. Like there's not going to be a point where his ADHD suddenly clears up and it's suddenly fine and easy. And I'm so much more happy to do this kind of work with him, like, and put our efforts together into this, if it's actually helping. So like, as long as it's effective, we'll keep doing it basically.
Maybe just regarding that ADHD, is this something that can be better over the life? I mean, the effect of it, or I'm just not familiar with that, or it's like...
Well, there's such huge range of effects that, like, bad outcomes that can happen from having adult ADHD, and obviously you're not doomed to have those problems, but without a support structure you probably are, because it's just not going to be in your capabilities to fix yourself. So it's a problem that I'm quite passionate about, because most people have a stereotype of ADHD and think it's pretty trivial. And everybody struggles with procrastinating sometimes, you know. So we all relate to it so much that we think, it's nothing. It's like it's not even a real disease or disorder. But that's just imagine like not being able to ever stop procrastinating and then think about like what life is like, because like that's hard. That's really, really hard. Yeah.
James,
The points and prizes.
Points. Actually, points we've never actually tied into like rewards directly. Somehow they are still motivating, even though they are just numbers. Like, but we write them in a little notebook, and we've even graphed them now, and like seeing that we're making a bit more, doing a few more every sprint, and it's really, really satisfying. So yeah.
Do you still use that physical board, or if you think that electronic one will use the same effect? Because when you have at work that electronic form is kind of usual, but at home when you don't have that sticky notes on your face, it's a little bit harder to complete it.
I think the physical board is an absolute necessity, especially at the start when we did this, and still now, because it isn't going anywhere. It's right there in our living room, and like you say, that's the thing with the physical board. Like, electric one could do more stuff and could probably automate some of this like bonus calculations that we have, and but it won't have the advantage of just constantly staying there. So I think that's why it can still sometimes you see physical boards at work, but especially for this, I think it's important to have the real one. I am starting to put more of our backlog onto just some sort of digital list, so that I've got, that's easier than Post-its, to be honest, and it's a lot of things. But that's fine, because then we'll pull that off onto real Post-its each time they go into a sprint. So yeah, I think that's as far as we'll probably go with the digitising, until I get around to coding an amazing personalised electronic board that will stay up all the time. But yeah.
Can you tell us some more about your plans to integrate it with Alexa?
Yeah, so I haven't got that far yet, unfortunately. But it was like really cool when this lady from Amazon was like, "Have you ever thought about it?" And I was like, "No." But the idea is that maybe the Alexa could be like an Agile coach almost, and could start someone with ADHD off on the path of training themselves to do Agile and Scrum. So it could even break it down into little tiny steps, like, okay, first of all, think of a space in your home where you can fit a board, right? And then come back to me when you've done that. And it can prompt you. If it can do the prompting itself, that's the most important thing, because then it's a voice in your house which is reminding you what your priorities are. I think there's loads of scope with it. It's just that I don't yet have the skill/time to make progress on it, but yeah.
You could have it if you have the Alexa plug to turn your kettle on and say, "Alexa, boil the kettle."
Yeah.
10 minutes later you could say, "Alexa, put the mug in the dishwasher."
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Reminders and prompts.
Yeah, and we need to invest in some proper Internet of Things kind of objects, so that we can, what Francis really wants is for us to be able to, well, Alexa could be like, "It's time for your daily stand-up." And then the lights go red, and there's like film music, and it's like so that's like, in the future, but not too far in the future, I hope. So yeah.
Anything else? Can I just say, superb talk.
Thanks very much.